Dust swirled like memory that morning, curling in soft gold ribbons around the empty street of Red Hollow. The town was waking slow, with boots scuffing boards and the sound of wagons creaking through the haze. Elias Boone walked through that dust as if it belonged to him, coat faded, boots thin, eyes tired from too many winters. Once, he'd owned half this valley and the laughter that came with it. Now he carried only a cracked saddle and the dull gleam of a wedding ring that had outlived its purpose. Folks watched him through swinging doors and slatted windows, whispering the same story that had become his shadow. That's Boone. Lost his wife. Lost his ranch, lost his sense. He didn't look up. The morning light caught the edges of his hat brim, tracing the face of a man who had forgotten what it felt like to hope. Down at the auction yard, the day roared to life. Traders barked, cattle lowed, coins clinked like rain against the troughs. Elias stood at the fence, quiet, letting the rhythm of other men's fortunes roll past him. Then he saw it. Off to one side, half hidden in shadow, a gray horse standing crooked, one leg bent as if the ground itself had betrayed it. Its coat was dull with dust, its ribs a map of hunger, but the eyes, those eyes were alive. Not wild, not begging, just waiting. The crowd jeered when the auctioneer called it out. "Fit for glue!" Someone laughed. "Can't pull nothing but pity?" The bid stopped before they even started. No one wanted the crippled beast. Elias watched as the animal turned its head toward him, the faintest flicker of recognition passing between two broken things. He reached for his pocket, found nothing but air. Then his thumb brushed the cool circle of gold on his finger. Clara's ring. He'd worn it through storms and silence, through the nights when her voice still echoed off the walls of an empty home. He closed his hand tight, then stepped forward. "I'll take him." The trader squinted. "With what money, Boone?" Elias slid the ring off his finger, holding it up like an offering to the sun. The light struck it, warm and merciless. "This," he said quietly. "It's all I got left worth trading." The trader stared, half in pity, half in disbelief, then nodded. The ring vanished into his palm. The rope changed hands. The crowd fell silent for a heartbeat. Then the laughter returned, softer this time, as if unsure who the fool really was. Elias led the horse out of the yard, his shadow stretching long across the road. The sun was sinking by the time they reached the broken fences of his old ranch. Weeds had grown tall where the corral once held life, and the porch leaned like a tired drunk. The house still smelled faintly of wood smoke and lilacs, Clara's scent carried on the wind like a ghost refusing to leave. He set a lantern on the table and brought the horse into the barn. "We'll get you right, fella," he murmured, voice rough from disuse. "Name's Ash. Fits, don't it?" The horse snorted, flinching at his touch. Elias moved slow, careful. He cleaned the wound along its leg, wrapped it with torn cloth, and whispered nonsense to calm them both. Later, he sat on an overturned bucket, humming the tune Clara used to sing when she brushed her hair by firelight. The sound filled the dark barn with something tender. Ash's ears twitched. The horse shifted closer, rested his nose against Elias's shoulder. For the first time in years, the man didn't feel entirely alone. Days turned like tired wheels. The town talked. In the saloon, Marshal Ray Cutter poured whiskey and shook his head. "Boone traded his wife's ring for a lame horse," he said to anyone who'd listen. "Poor fool's gone soft in the head." Laughter followed, sharp and cruel. Only Maggie Rose, the livery owner's daughter, stayed quiet. She'd seen Boone down by the stream, washing the horse's wounds with care, talking to it like it could understand sorrow. Elias didn't answer the gossip. Each morning he rose with the sun, mended fences, fetched water, and worked beside the gray horse that limped less with every dawn. At night, he would sit by the barn door, watching the moon drift through torn clouds, listening to the slow, honest breathing of the animal beside him. There was peace in that sound, a rhythm of survival, of something being rebuilt one heartbeat at a time. One evening, as the wind carried the scent of rain, Ash tried to stand without leaning on the support beam. The leg shook but held. Elias froze, his hand gripping the doorframe, afraid to breathe. Then he remembered Clara's voice, soft and certain. Don't stop caring for what's broken, Eli. Sometimes that's where God hides his miracles. Ash took another step. And another. The limp remained, but the will was stronger. Elias felt the sting of tears he hadn't known were left in him. He reached out, rested his palm on the horse's neck. Ash lowered his head, pressing against his chest, trusting. Outside, the sky deepened into violet, and the first stars blinked awake. The ranch was still poor, still silent, but inside that quiet, something small and sacred had begun to breathe again. Elias Boone, the man the town had written off as finished, stood beneath the lantern's soft glow, feeling, for the first time since the day he buried his wife, that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't beyond saving. Weeks drifted by like pages turning in a slow wind. The ranch began to breathe again, though it was still rough around the edges. A few fence posts straightened, the well bucket mended, a faint whiff of hay in the air. Elias Boone moved through the days with quiet purpose. His rhythm matched to the steady pulse of hooves behind him. Ash had grown stronger. The limp that once broke his stride was softening into a rhythm all its own. A mark of what he'd endured, not what he'd lost. When Elias worked the yard, Ash followed, curious, steady, and in the hush of twilight, they'd stand together at the edge of the field, watching shadows lengthen like memories across the earth. Maggie Rose started coming by in the late afternoons, bringing small kindnesses, a bag of oats, a loaf of cornbread, a few gentle words. She didn't say much, and that's why Elias didn't mind her company. She'd lean on the fence, skirts brushing the dust, and smile at the gray horse that now walked almost without pain. "He's coming along," she'd say softly. "Guess neither of you knew how to quit." Elias would nod, half smile, and look away, embarrassed by warmth he didn't expect to feel again. They talked sometimes about the land, the stubborn weeds, the dry creek, the rumors of wild horses roaming free past the ridge. But beneath their quiet words was something deeper, something patient and unspoken, growing the way dawn grows, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. Then came the day the peace trembled. Riders brought word that a band of hunters from Abilene were heading toward the ridge, men who trapped wild mustangs to sell, breaking their spirit for coin. Marshal Ray Cutter came out to the ranch, hat tilted low, spurs jangling. "Boone," he called, "don't get yourself tangled in what ain't yours. Those mustangs don't belong to you." Elias wiped sweat from his brow, looked toward the hills shimmering in the distance. "Maybe not," he said. "But neither did this one. And look what a little care did." Cutter laughed, mean and easy. "That horse ain't wild no more. He's yours to lose again." When the lawman rode off, the dust hung in the air long after he was gone. Ash pawed the ground, uneasy, ears twitching toward the ridge as thunder muttered far away. Elias stepped closer, laying a hand against the gray's neck. The muscles trembled under his palm. "You remember, don't you?" he whispered. "You come from up there." That night, sleep wouldn't come. Elias sat by the barn, lantern dim, listening to the restless pacing of Ash in his stall. The horse kept glancing toward the open door, where the hills loomed under the moon like dark waves. Something in Elias stirred, an ache both old and new, the kind that comes from seeing freedom and knowing you can't cage it. Just before dawn, he saddled Ash and rode out. The air was cool, the desert quiet except for the sound of hoofbeats and a heart beating hard against ribs. Mist lay thick in the low valleys, and as the sky blushed pink, they reached the ridge. Down below, hunters were already at work, ropes coiled, rifles glinting. A cluster of wild horses shimmered in the golden light, their coats catching fire from the sunrise. Elias pulled the reins, stopping on a rise above them. "Not today," he murmured. He nudged Ash forward. The horse hesitated, then found his courage in the familiar voice. They rode down slow, a single figure cutting through the smoke of morning. The hunters turned, half startled, half amused. "Boone!" one called. "Didn't think you had the guts left to ride?" Elias stopped a few paces away. "I ain't here for talk." His voice was low, almost kind. "Let 'em go!" Laughter broke among them, but it faded when Ash stepped forward, his limp barely visible now. The horse pawed the dirt, nostrils flaring. From the herd, a call rose, high and trembling. Ash answered, a deep rolling sound that echoed through the canyon like thunder finding its echo. The herd stirred. The lead hunter reached for his rope. "Move, old man, before you get hurt." Elias shook his head. "You shoot him, you'll have to shoot me too." Something shifted then, maybe in the light, maybe in the silence that followed. Ash took a step, then another, then broke into a run. The limp vanished, swallowed by power that had only been waiting for belief. The gray horse thundered past the hunters toward the herd, mane flying like smoke. The wild ones answered his call, hooves drumming the earth in rhythm. Elias stood in the open, tears stinging his eyes, and opened the gate of his old corral. "Go on, boy," he whispered. "Go home." The herd surged forward, bursting through like a storm breaking free. The hunters' horses reared and scattered, their riders shouting into the wind, but no one could stop what was already set loose. Ash turned once at the top of the ridge, looked back, eyes bright, proud, alive, then vanished into the sea of gold and dust. The sound of hooves rolled away until there was only silence. Elias sank to his knees, the sun warming his face, the wind soft as Clara's hand once was against his cheek. "You did good," he whispered. "You're free." By the time Maggie Rose reached him, the hunters were gone. The air still shimmered from what had passed. She dismounted, ran to him. "Elias!" He looked up, smiling through tears. "Guess I finally learned what it means to let go." Together they stood in the golden hush, watching the ridge. The world felt different, not new but redeemed somehow. A gray feather drifted down from the sky, spinning slow, landing in Elias's palm. He stared at it, then tucked it in his shirt pocket like a promise. Weeks later, the town would whisper again, this time softer. They'd say wild horses had come back to Boone's Valley. Some claimed they'd seen a gray stallion leading them, strong and whole. Elias no longer wore a ring, but his hands had purpose again. He worked the land, shared quiet suppers with Maggie, and sometimes, when the evening light was right, he'd stand by the fence and listen. In the distance, faint and far, came the echo of hooves, steady, free, familiar. And when he spoke, it was almost to himself. "Turns out, what's broken ain't always lost. Sometimes it's just waiting on kindness." The wind carried his words across the plain, soft as prayer, as the screen of memory faded to gold and silence. Maybe that's what redemption looks like in the West. Not triumph, not riches, not applause. Just a man and a creature who refused to quit, both limping their way toward grace. If you ever feel too far gone, remember Elias Boone and the horse called Ash. They found each other in the dust. And in that broken place, they found the strength to stand again.